Hello, my jacked lads. Oh, I have got a beautiful glare. TKL right here. And it's a hefty boy. It is a very, very hefty boy. Uh, some of you may not be familiar with glare or Geon or keyboards, in which case, hi, my name is Simon, and this is me reviewing a 4.5 kilo keyboard because memes. So this is a TKL, a wing keyless TKL made by Glare, who is a longtime friend of Geon and a longtime keyboard enjoyer. It is a very heavy TKL, coming in at about 4.4 kilos with my build, with a very, very large brass bottom piece. It's very Korean in terms of its proportions and styling. It's a top mount, 11 degrees, very reminiscent of duck boards and earlier Korean customs. And it's got some, some light styling like HG sides and other things to add a little bit of character to something that would normally be more of a bog standard TKL. And best of all, this all came in at about 460 US dollars, excluding the PCB. The higher end PCBs were about $60 for a total price of $520, which for what it is a fantastic, fantastic deal. So, intro. Totally wasn't vaping. All right, so let's start with the simple bits. Unboxing experience. Glare, thank you for giving us a hard case instead of literal garbage. That's going to be thrown away. The hard case is pretty much a standard Geon hard case. Keyboard goes in there. There's a little protection thingy, for protection, and you got a little sleeve. You can put your gator in there. See, fits right in. Fits right in. So very nice to see a hard case instead of terrible wasteful packaging. Obviously, this is a very, very heavy board. As such, like the case does a good job, okay? But at all times, it feels like the handle's about to fly off and the door's about to fly open because this thing is hefty. With the carrying case included, it's probably like 4,800 grams. Let's find out together. It is 4,900 grams. Right? Yep, 4,974. It's pretty heavy. It's pretty heavy. It does succeed at its purpose, which is if you want to take this keyboard to work, go for it. And you want to take it back home, go for it. Generally, I type on keyboards for about 4 weeks prior to reviewing them. In this case, I typed on this for a lot longer than 4 weeks, mainly because it was on my desk and it was too heavy, and I was too lazy to take it back home. So this was at the office for a while. But I did enjoy it. So I'll save you guys the hassle of having to watch however long this video is going to be. It's a good keyboard. You should absolutely consider it if it reruns. All right. Let me get my notes so I don't miss anything. I mean, straight off the bat, let's have a look at it. Very Korean, proportion-wise, about 8 mil top, 5 mil sides. I'm more of a fan of 8 and 4, but with something this hefty, 8 and 4 probably would not have been a good play. So Glare, being a very smart keyboard man, probably made the very smart keyboard choice. The front height is not terrible. Obviously, it is a high angle, right? So front height is usually an issue when, I'll explain with hands. Front height is usually an issue with a lower angle board because the angle is lower, therefore the plate and PCB needs to sit down lower, and then you struggle with the front. But front height is very, very comfortable. It's about 21, give or take. I do have calipers, but they're in my living room because I'm a really good keyboard content creator. But front height is very comfy. I mean, with the angle, which by the way you will get used to just typing on it. With the angle, you're like gonna instinctually put your hands higher up than you would naturally typing on another board. Putting them higher up means you're not gonna really notice the front height. You notice the angle more than the front height. All right, we do see that this is a very nice blue gray. This is all right, a very nice blue gray. Now, what I define blue gray as, and what everyone should define blue gray as, is in some lights it looks blue, and in some other lights it looks gray. So let's try and see that. Okay, yeah, there we go. That looks blue. That looks blue. That still looks blue, but kind of a little gray, This is more of a bluish blue gray. I think one of the best blue gray implementations I've seen is actually the Noxery 280S. This is similar to like Jane V2 blue gray, where it's more blue than gray. But for me, blue gray, like I said, in some lights is gray, in some lights is blue. And depending on the lighting, it's usually a mix of the two. But the anodization actually looks very nice. Let's have ourselves a peek. Now, this board is very dirty because I've been using it. And normally, like any other, keyboard video maker is going to clean it, make sure it's very shiny. But no, I want to show you like a real used keyboard. Obviously, if anything is super gunky, I'll clean it, okay? But anodization is very clean, very consistent, very nice in color. Obviously, there's some fingerprints over there. It is a rather fingerprinty anodization. It's not like the most fingerprinty, but it is fingerprinty. Have a look at the back. I mean, there isn't much like aluminum surface to show because the entire back is a big piece of brass. But some treasure in there. But yeah, again, this is all fingerprints. The anodization itself is totally fine, and that's dust. Very, very clean anodization. See, I suffer from a condition called incredibly sweaty hands. The finishing on the brass is very, very good. As somebody that suffers from incredibly sweaty hands, I don't touch my weight. But even though I have not touched my weight, you can see there are two spots over here and two smaller spots, very small ones, right there and there. If you can barely see it, right there and there. Let me try and get that for you. I guess it depends on the angle. But pretty much any brass that isn't, full Cerakoted or full clear coated with like multiple layers is gonna, have little marks and start to patina with time, which is fine. So anodization is pretty much spot on. Now, if you haven't noticed, this has what we refer to as HG sides. HG sides means the middle right here comes up further than the top and bottom. So when you look at it from the side, which we're going to do with the macro cam, see that it bulges a little bit. See that little bulge right there? Little bulge. Little bulge. I mean, I assume everybody watching this video has seen HG sides, but they are quite nice. We also have an HG top, which is also visible here through all my fingerprints. You see, boom, right there. Cute little HG top, wraps into the HG sides, and believe it or not, there is an HG front. Ever so slight, and it sits rather low. So in practical use, you're probably never going to actually notice the HG front, but this overall from like a aesthetic standpoint, from a design perspective, this is what I would consider the best example of a modernized classic Korean TKL. The top looks very simple. There's no dumb badges. There's nothing being stupid. The wing keyless cuts are standard Korean proportions. That means they're kind of pointier at the sides, as opposed to more rounded on more Western boards. You've got 8 and 5, which are fantastic proportions for the bezels. You're using standard 87A or 87B spacing. It's very nice. And day to day when you use it, it looks like a simple Korean board. However, when you're handling it, which is rare, you start to see the little nuances. Little HG front, little HG sides, little HG back, and finally the bottom. You can see big ol' inset USB-C. You can tell that that's on a daughter board because the PCB would be up here. I apologize. This board is heavy. And of course, this little cut here. So if we're looking at it straight on, logically, this would have continued, but there's a little cut here. Small little aesthetic things that really, really tie the design together. Now, the very large external only brass weight is pretty. You got a little machining there for the Glare logo. Looks very nice. And it's very functional because it houses the USB port. And like any brass weight in any keyboard, it gives a large mass to be able to help absorb vibrations that go through your board. Now, we'll talk about the sound implications of a external only weight when we get into the design, into the internals of the design. But for now, we're just taking a tour of the outside. We've got ourselves some feet in a style that I have not personally seen before. Now, on stream, twitch.tv/BlackSimon, somebody did give me a tip and said, Simon, you should spend a little bit more time on bump-ons. Because I spent a lot of time on screws. But nobody ever asks, how is bump-on? So let's have a look at the bump-ons. Okay, so if I remember correctly, these are not adhered. These are pressure fit. So let's find out if I am correct. Where are my nice tweezers? Oh no, did I lose them? Oh no, Kate is going to spank me. All right, well, I'm in trouble, boys. We're using the bad tweezers. These, yep, they are pressure fit. They are indeed pressure fit. So, you can tell it's got like a little nipple in there. Little thick head. That goes in the hole. Giggle. And these are very good bump-ons. They feel like maybe 80A to 90A hardness. They're nice and hard, and generally you want hard bump-ons when you're dealing with something as heavy and as massive as the Glare. Now, let's do our bump-on test where we see how gracefully it can navigate the streets of Bussy Town. Okay, I mean, that's a good 3 kilos of force to move it. That's kind of hard to move. I was actually right. It's about 3 kilos because this is about 4, lifting it straight up. Yeah, about 3 kilos of force to do the Bussy Town tour. Now, I don't have to tell you this more than once, but I'm going to keep telling you this. This board will get you jacked. Just moving it around, lifting it, building it, unbuilding it, rebuilding it. You're going to get strong. You're going to get in some reps without realizing. What I'm trying to really say is you should buy 2 so you can dual wield. All right, let's finally have a look at the case screws. Just the case screws. We'll look at the internal screws real soon. Now, where is my big set of screwdrivers? Are you the correct size? You are not. No, that's not even close, dude. Okay, so I now have screwdrivers that have correct metric sizes, so I can let you know what sizes the screws actually are. Apparently, it's none of these. Okay, so the size is the one size that I don't have, which is probably somewhere in this room. Cool. So yeah, check out my brand new screwdrivers in which I don't have the correct size to build a keyboard. So let's use our old screwdrivers. Nope. In order for you guys to have a classic Simon experience, I'm leaving all that in the video because is it really a Simon video if I don't struggle to find a screwdriver? All right, so this is a 2.5. It's a 2.0-5/64 times 50. At least this one will just be like, hey, I'm a hex 0.07. Hey, I'm a hex 1.3. What is this nonsense sizing? So anyway, if you know what 2.0-5/64 times 50 is, please let me know in the comments. It looks like M2.5. Well, hex 2.5. So screws come out real easily. And as I'm doing some unscrewing, I am going to give you something very special this video, which is the actual Glare backstory. Now, Glare was in the keyboard hobby early, like a lot earlier than a lot of us, because, of course, he's Korean. And he was actually designing and machining some one-off boards just for himself, for personal use. And they were pretty wild. If you haven't seen said designs, they are available on the internet. If you know how to dig through Naver, or Naver, depends on how you pronounce it. Basically, Korean Yahoo/Google. You'll see some of the designs there. Anyway, turns out he had some manufacturing issues with Korean manufacturers and was really struggling. Like, it was hard to get curves. Like, for example, I mean, you should know how difficult it was to actually produce things in Korea. And it still is, with the exception of like Gion. So he was struggling, and Gion had noticed his struggling and had reached out to him and said, hey, I'll help you machine your keyboard. For this particular keyboard, I do have a link, and I will drop it down in the description so you can like read through like the specific issues that he was having and like how Gion solved them. So this is when a love story was born. This is when Gion met Glare. I think this was back in like 2018, maybe 2017, something like that. Now, way back in the day, you may not know this, Gion didn't know how to build keyboards. Gion didn't know very much about keyboards, but he was interested. And Glare would actually help Gion to learn all about keyboards, not only design, but also how to just put one together. This is a really fun story. So Gion was assisted by Glare to essentially get onboarded. So we basically have Glare to thank for pretty much everything we've gotten from Gion so far. So you guys may remember Gion's first board, the F1 8X. So that was a collaboration between Glare and Gion. It was their first ever collaboration. And it was a keyboard that they only expected to sell like a handful of units for. They were thinking like maybe like 20, 50 units max. So they got 900 orders on the first day. And since then, I mean, GionWorks was born. Since then, like, Glare has left his previous job, is now the head of the keyboard division at GionWorks with a lot of people under him. So we have Glare to thank for helping build something amazing, that being GionWorks, and for making the Glare TKL something that everybody can actually enjoy. All right, let's try and take this apart. Now, if I remember correctly, the JST is incredibly short. I will complain more about this later, but for now, let's just unplug it. Now, if I remember correctly, you have to get in there with tweezers, or you need to have a third hand. Unfortunately, those of us that are not Korean do not, in fact, have three hands. So I found the best way to do this is to just very gently separate the top and bottom. Kind of like this. And then flip it forward. There we go. And then you guys see that JST? Because I sure do. And then you get in there. I'm actually going to use a softer tool so I don't damage it, because I'm not going to grab the connector. I'm just going to shove the wire. Oh, but Simon, that's not good for the keyboard and the JST. Yes, it's not good for the keyboard and it's not good for the JST. You know what would have been good? Something that I can actually reach with my hands. All right, I'm going to use my big black solder sucker. There we go. And we have taken it apart. Beautiful. All right, so for the record, The plate screws for this are pretty much the same exact screw type as the case screws. The only slightly different screws are the ones that hold in the weight, which we're probably not going to mess with, but maybe we'll consider. So let's actually just have a look at the screws right now. So what do we got here? We've got very clean, I assume M2.5, knurled, hex. Looks like a nice zinc coating, if I'm not mistaken. Looks pretty good, nice and shiny. You guys know what I'm usually looking for a little bit of gunk on the threads, and I don't see gunk, but I see a little bit of, you know, thread grab, like a little bit of wear on like the very tips of some of these, which is fine. These screws are great, and if I'm not mistaken, we were all sent extra screws, which is pretty much the Geon/Glare standard of it cost me literally nothing to give you like 6 additional screws. So why would I not do that and save, you know, thousands of dollars in logistics for people that potentially might have issues in the future? Take note, other keyboard designers. Just send people extra screws. It's not hard. It's not hard. You're probably overbuying the screws anyway to hit your MOQ. All right, let's continue disassembling, although story time is over. There we go. We can see that the same screwdriver also works for the top mount. Now, you can never go wrong with the top mount, especially if you're trying to build something that is very classic Korean. Or just trying to design your first board, or trying to design your second board, or your third board, or your fourth board, or your 18th board. Just make top mount. Top mount is good. Oh, but Simon, I want it to be bouncier. Consider leaf spring top mount. Consider a softer plate in top mount. Consider PCB mount top mount, okay? We don't need to start doing gaskets and memes to have an enjoyable typing experience, because when you add more complexity, you add more risk. And this is a very nice feeling board. We'll get to the sound. For now, we're going to tour the case internals. Sir, that's such a cute screw. Okay, I have to show you the screw. Check out that plate screw. Oh, it's so cute. Oh, it's like a little babby version of this one. And this one is the uncle. And this one is the dad. Please subscribe for more family screwing information. Oh, we got another one out. I'm just trying my best to like not lose these screws for reasons. I totally didn't lose a friend's screws when I was building his Calliope. Don't worry about it. Legit. All right, we'll talk about the plate and PCB once we get there. For now, let us just have a nice look at the internals. Let's start with the top. Funny enough, this is actually a relatively complex top. This thing weighs nothing, especially compared to this. This just for reference. Like generally when you build, design, make a keyboard, yeah, the bottom is of course going to be heavier than the top, but never by this much. At the bottom, it's 3.5 kilos. The top, I'm going to try and balance it here, is 1/10 of that weight. Oof. Those of you that understand basic acoustics will now think and say, ooh, that must mean this board kind of sounds high-pitched. You're not wrong. All right, so incredibly light, but relatively complex. I mean, first of all, we know that on the outside, we've got HG sides, a cut right here, HG back, HG front. But if we look close enough, we're going to see that there's even more complexity. Because generally, when you're looking at a top mount, it's just going to have like a plate cutout, right? For plate mounts. But let's have a look at this. So we've got our first layer of cuts right here, our second layer, and then our tertiary layer, which is, the front. Then we see actual plate mounting points. and we see that there is a machined area outside of the plate mounting points. Why is this? There's probably, very good reasons, but we'll get there. And then we've got our actual case screw points. But then over here, you guys see that? You see that little rad right there? Little radius in the machining? And also here. So there's a lot going on. So this is accomplishing a few things. It's handling alignment, it's handling acoustics, it's handling assembly, and it's handling plate mounting. And overall, it's doing it pretty well. I don't see any major issues, but I see that the inside of this is a little dirty. A little bit of a dirty boy. That's a somewhat dirty boy. But obviously that is on a macro cam where everything looks like a dirty boy. For example, here is a Ron. He looks dirty, because he is. All right, so top is fairly simple. We can see where the plate mounts. We'll talk about the plate mounting itself later. And we can see where the case itself mounts. Looks like it does a relatively good job. Now, in terms of the top-bottom assembly, we saw all of those machining marks, all those basically machining waves that replace alignment pillars or alignment tabs. So let's see how much movement we have. That's actually very good. Okay, there's a little bit of top-bottom movement. Or front-back movement. But very little left-to-right movement. Now, I'm doing this, and you can hear the sound. The sound is kind of intensified by the fact that this is seamless. So the entirety of the top sits over the bottom. So any axis in which there would be, some potential movement, it's going to sound louder because you got more material running into each other. Not a bad thing. Overall, it fits together very nicely. But the top-bottom disparity is kind of weird, like in terms of weight. Most boards, if you tap the top and you tap the bottom, you're going to hear that acoustically they sound very differently. That's kind of how materials work. But for this, it's really, really present. All right. Now we've got the bottom. It's an interesting bottom design, to say the very least. Let us have a look. So we've got some engraving here, Glare TKL, number 4. Designed and manufactured in South Korea, Geonworks. Very cool. But then we see, what's all this grill? What's all this? Well, what's going on here? What's happening? And then we see, why are there cuts for stabs? Well, generally, this means that the plate PCB assembly sits really close to the bottom, which in this case, not that close to the bottom, but it's relatively close to the bottom. But this was designed with thinner plates and more flexible PCBs in mind. This was also designed with acoustics in mind. Now, if you've ever seen the internals of a good TKL with a good internal brass weight, you'll see that the brass weight will often have cuts. The reason why the cuts exist is, I know this sounds like, tinfoil hat pseudoscience, but in theory, it actually does work. Having cuts means that when you type on the board, basically the sound that comes off of the PCB plate assembly will basically kind of like bounce between these two and kind of degrade faster. Now, there are two types of vibrations when you type. There's the physical vibrations that go through the material, and then there's the sounds that come off of said material. Generally, those sounds come off of the plate PCB assembly. So having little grills will also do that. This is also way more expensive to machine as a result, because if you look very closely, you can see that everything is chamfered, because of course it is. Of course everything is chamfered. See that little hole? That's chamfered. You see this little bar that goes across? That's chamfered. You see this assembly point? It's chamfered. You see that screw? See that screw? I mean, that's countersunk, but you see that cat hair right there? It's chamfered. A lot of chamfers. A whole bunch. So the way that the assembly works essentially is you have a mid piece. So this is a mid piece. Although realistically this is the bottom and this is just a foot, but if we consider how massive this brass is, this is basically just a mid piece. You know what? Let's have a look. Let's actually take it apart. Oh, okay. I assumed that this would be way harder to get started, but it's not. So I typed on this, obviously for a long time, prior to doing a review. I would not be much of a reviewer if I did not spend much time with the board. And almost instantly, I noticed that having a aluminum mid piece was kind of negatively impacting the sound. And I reached out to Gian and I said, hey, what if we were to replace this piece right here with a piece of brass? Sure, it would make the board even more stupidly heavy, but I think that like in terms of like the idea of like the cuts that you were trying to do here, brass would make a lot more sense. To which Gian replied, yeah, Simon, but I don't fucking have time for your memes, bro. I'm trying to run a business. I don't have time to make something stupid like that. But it was a good idea. The reason why I know it was a good idea is because if you look at the Glare 65, it had a recent change. You know what that change is? It's a brass mid piece. Yeah. All right. Let's get this little mid piece out. To be fair, this is like decently hefty. This is about what is this? It's like a good 700 grams, maybe 800. Let's weigh it. Let's weigh it. And I'm actually glad we took it apart because I just saw something interesting that I did not see before. It is 755 grams. For those of you keeping track at home, that means that this should weigh whatever the math is. That many grams. 2,700. I promise. I know math. All right, let's try and move this big boy out of the way. Have a look at the bottom. All right, so we've seen this side of the bottom. Wait, now that I look even closer, there's more chamfers. And there's fillets, and there's... Why? Why? All right, let's have a look at the back. Now, the back is fairly interesting. Why is the back not uniformly flat? Well, from an acoustic standpoint. Now, when we're talking about acoustics, I'm talking about physical vibrations, physically moving through the material. The purpose of a brass weight is to dampen any vibrations that are moving through the case. That's why we have brass weights in there. And then by dampening those vibrations, you can essentially deepen the sound, make the board quieter, do a lot of fun stuff. But the way that the vibrations will move through the bottom piece to the weight is through surface area. So by raising these 8 points, you are therefore increasing the surface area in which the aluminum piece can transfer vibration to the brass piece, which is very cool. It also helps with alignment, but it can accomplish more than one thing. So bottom looks fine. The internal anodization here is better than the external anodization on a lot of boards I've seen. Now I can see a very, very small amount of striping, but that could just be the fact that it wasn't cleaned very well at the factory. A little bit of a pattern where I can see the grain of the anode. Now, generally with good anode, you shouldn't be able to really see the grain of the anode unless it's like clear or something. Clear anode. That being silver. Anyway, bottom looks relatively interesting. This is a stupidly complex amount of machining. And to be fair, do I think it was necessary? Maybe. For the massive weight on the back and like the acoustics of the board as a whole, if you had gone with a perfectly flat bottom instead of this whole, you know, treasure map on the back, I think it would have been even more high pitched, which would have been a problem. Now, obviously, the solution is brass mid-piece. So on that topic, let's actually look at the brass. That is heavy. Okay, so we have our 8 points where it interfaces with the back. We've got 4 little mount points for our daughter board. Now, in terms of daughter board placement and port placement, generally this is something that I will talk about when I'm doing the case externals, but in this case, I'm doing it here for a reason, because we can see how far back this actually sits. Realistically, you can machine close to the edge of a piece of metal. Like it's not a huge problem, like as long as you leave enough of a gap. Now, this is a little bit too inset. Now, if we're using normie USB, it fits right in. So all you normies with your normie cables, enjoy. If I were, for example, to grab a Chad USB and try to put that in there, well, we struggle a little bit. Now, it looks like it's in there, but it's actually interfacing with this little bit up here. And indeed, it has scratched it. So be a little bit careful with your big Sigma connectors, but besides that, kind of fine. All right, we see that it uses the step technique, the step row technique, to step up the angle, because this is way easier than actually machining a slope. And it looks pretty good. So daughter board cable goes in there. And through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 screws, this assembles to the mid piece. And yep, it fits right in. I don't have to struggle. I know that those little 8 points are going to catch it, and we're chilling. Beautiful. All right. Now, give me an opportunity to get all these caps off, because I do want to show you the plate in full. So 1 second, and I'll see you guys in a moment. Oh yeah, I totally did not take that opportunity to vape a whole bunch. All right. Here we are. Here's our plate. Got all the caps off. You may notice that the caps were beige and the switches are beige. This is because I like beige. There's also a lot of cat hairs here. Those of you that haven't been keeping up with the streams, or my life in general, I now have tripled my cat amount from one cat, Elsa, who almost never came into the stream room and would never rub herself on my keyboards, to now having Elsa, Ham, and Beep. Now, Ham is confined to Ham Jail, which is this room, because he doesn't get along with the other cats yet. But he gets along with keyboards. So if you leave a keyboard out, he's gonna rub his ass all over it. So please don't mind the cat hairs. I've tried my best to clean this up, but that's as good as it's gonna get. All right, so plates. If you use your eyeballs, you can see that this is the polycarbonate half plate. As such, there is no plate in this area, just covers this area here. This is also a split plate. That means that the 60% cluster uses its own plate and its own mounting points, and the NAF cluster uses its own plate and its own mounting points. It's pretty cool. In terms of plate cuts, we've got our usual separator cuts. I mean, this one doesn't really qualify. We've got our spacebar cut, and we can see that this is a south-facing spacebar, the best kind, as per my preference. And besides that, not much else. Small little cut here and here. Now, normally putting cuts close to stabilized keys or modifiers in general it will generally lower the pitch a tiny bit depending on the plate material, and also increase the sound. So for example, the backspace is already relatively loud. You don't necessarily need a cut to the left of it, but your pipe key is smaller. And if you're trying to match up the acoustics of your pipe key kind of sounding like your backspace, you put a little cut next to it. That's the general idea behind it. All right, so we see that our mount points are U mount points, but also split U mount points. Simon, are you just making shit up? Yes, absolutely. All right, so this is a U mount point. not to be confused with an O mount point. So an O mount goes all the way around. A U mount does not. What is the advantage of a U mount then? Well, if I've got a screw in there, right, and that screw is holding that point, and I press down really, really hard on the plate, instead of deforming this area here, what will happen is it'll slip out a tiny bit, little slip out, and it gives you a teensy bit more flex. And then having this cut right here will also do the same. So it allows you to have a relatively firm mount to the actual case, but when you are to press the plate incredibly hard, you'll get a little bit of flex out of it that you otherwise wouldn't really get. You'd kind of get deformation instead of flex. Now, this came with a aluminum plate standard, and my particular version here, polycarbonate half plate. I tried a full aluminum plate version at the most recent Dubai meetup, and I actually preferred it from a sound perspective. From a feel perspective, I very much prefer this. Now, I have the original aluminum plate, but I have no idea where it is. So, speed run time. World record. I just happen to have a drawer full of plates. So I want to look at the actual plate that came with it, because that'll give me a better better idea of what Glare was trying to do. So we could see what carried across. Well, a lot of things carried across. We still have our U cuts. Sorry, our U mounts with a cut. We still have a decent separator between the F row and your num row. It's not a full all the way across cut, because if you were to cut too much, then you'd have your num row flex down a little bit too much. And what we're aiming for is like a homogeneous flex. Let's see. The this actually has cuts next to the enter and the shift. Interesting. Whereas this doesn't. Okay, interesting. What else is going on? And we've got the OG Korean style on both of these, by the way. Basically spacebar cut, where only 3 sides of the switch clip in, and then this entire area stays open. I really like this for a variety of reasons. Reason number 1 is it'll give you some spacebar flex. Now, obviously, this isn't mounted to the top, so it's just contacting the bottom of the case. There's no flex. But it allows your spacebar switch to go down a little bit further than you would anticipate. We're talking like a millimeter, but you notice it when you type. And having the wire fully accessible is actually really handy, just in case you have really sussy wires. It's good from a compatibility standpoint. So standard plate and PC plate, not too different in terms of style. We can see that there's no big memes on the alphas. The alphas are just standard cuts. These actually look like very tight cuts. I bet you that a MX switch would stick in there very well. And of course, I have random Gat X. Is that a Gat X? Yep, there's a little X. Okay. So let's see if this grips it firmly. Okay, it's not as firm as I would have expected. So what I'm looking for is when I clip a switch in, will it just fly out if I press the bottom? And it kind of does. So not as tight as I would like. As an indication, the second you stick it in, you can tell if it's really gripping the switch or not. Good example would be like I don't know how it is now, but the original unicorns. My original unicorn and my original Singa, even my Jaguar, I think? No, not the Jaguar. But every other Singa board had really, really tight switch cutouts. And I like super tight switch cutouts. It means that you don't struggle in when soldering. It means you know everything's going to be stable, everything's going to be flat, and you don't have to worry about it. The con is your thumbs are going to hurt like crazy when you're sticking the switches in. But if you have a very large brain, you can just sit on your plate. Trust me. All right, so I've got Gat X round 2 in here that were looped by my friend Paul with 203 grade 00. So I wanted to go for very smooth linear. I believe these are 57.5 gram TX. Yep, they feel consistent. Overall, I really like the feel of this build. Now, plate aside, let's have a look at the PCB. It's a HEFTY PCB. Now, for me, in my opinion, HEFTY is the best PCB maker to have ever lived, and who will ever live, because I mean, I just have a lot of experience using his PCBs. I've gone through maybe 50, 20 HEFTY PCBs, never had a single problem with any of them. Whereas with other boards, oh no, it's not flashed. Oh no, random things don't work. Oh no, columns don't work. Oh no, I lifted a pad. Oh no, it uses a dumb controller instead of an AT Mega. But overall, PCB, just fine. Just fine. Of course, there is still room for complaints. So, firstly, let's have a look at the controller. There's our controller. You can see the Atmel logo right there. That is a 32U4. I'm presuming I can't see it, but you guys can. Yep, that is a 32U4. We got our clock right there. We've got our, I forget the thing. You know the thing. The thing where you can flash firmware via the pins. And we've got our ability to JST or hand wire, native on the PCB. So this was custom made for GeonWorks. So this is a H87 new V1 for GeonWorks. And you can tell because on the front, you've got a little Geon logo and a HEFTY logo and some cat hairs. Those come standard, by the way. HEFTY does have a very cute cat, and I would be very happy to have a Stella hair in my assembly. All right, so that's all the good stuff. Here's the bad stuff. How the hell am I supposed to plug this in? How? It goes up here. Okay, oh, but Simon, you can just turn it upside down. Oh, okay, let me just turn it upside down. There we go. Everything is fixed now. Oh no, how do I put the plate on the top? That's right, you don't. So basically you need 3 hands to assemble this. This is the second board in a row where this has happened, and it is super, super, super annoying. So consider ribbon cables, consider unsleeved JSGs. And I understand that you're probably dealing with like very, very little space in here, which is why I said consider ribbon cables. We have the technology, we have options. So I don't have to freaking struggle with this and have to ask somebody for help to like hold a piece of my board while I'm building it. A reminder that what makes a custom keyboard is you customize it. And the way you customize a keyboard is you can replace the switches and the plate and all these things that require you unplugging and replugging your JST every single time. Nobody's going to get their glare and just be like, I know exactly what's going in it. I'm going to use, I mean, like, I thought I knew exactly what I wanted, but I'm swapping to this plate. So, yeah. Okay, so that's my complaint. My only other complaint is the one that we talked about, which is the fact that this is aluminum and not brass, means that from a acoustic standpoint, could be improved. Now, the overall sound profile is very Korean, which is to be expected, okay? This is not a board for everyone. As like, you know, not everybody's gonna like a more Korean sounding, AKA higher pitched board. For me, I like it, okay? I like it, but there is room for improvement. My half-plate build is quite flexy in theory, and I will demonstrate this by reassembling this as I go through the rest of my notes about typing feel. And by quite flexy in theory, I mean like if I physically press on the plate really hard, you can see that it flexes, but when you type on it, not that flexy. So you know how people do flex tests on the internet and they press it super hard? Yeah, but nobody types like that. So, I mean, I'll flex test, but then I'll also type on the board to see, okay, what kind of plate movement are we seeing with traditional, typing force? Not much, which is another reason why I would also consider probably going aluminum instead of polycarbonate half plate. Now, for a PC half plate build, this feels kind of stiff. Now, obviously, I'm kind of spoiled, okay? Keep that in mind. I'm spoiled, and I'm an enjoyer of big flexi keyboards with big memes and stuff like that. This is a far more classic, and it's meant to be a far more classic design. It's very Korean in sound, it's very Korean in style, and it is very Korean in feel. And keep in mind, like, Korea is the reason why stainless steel plates even exist. Korea loves a stiffer typing experience than the Western market would, for example. Not necessarily a bad thing, but just keep that in mind. Keep in mind that in order to actually get a decent amount of flex out of this, you're going to have to sacrifice a lot of the pitch. It's going to end up sounding a lot more high pitched than you might be okay with. Now, as I'm closing this up, we can also see the mounting points. We see that our stab starts here and ends here. And we see that our mounting points are far outside the stabilizer landing area. As a matter of fact, they're right under the wing keyless blockers, which is where everybody should put it on their TKL. But people don't understand the concept of if you move your mount points to smarter places, then the overall typing experience is going to feel a little bit softer and a little bit more comfortable for everyone. So in that regard, very well done. Remember that, like I said at the very beginning of this video, this is the best example of a true modernized Korean custom. All right, example time. So here's a bunch of switches. This is me pressing down hard. Oh, it's on a desk bat. Okay, give me a second. Of course it's gonna bounce up and down on a desk bat. Oh, guys, look how bouncy this keyboard is. Wow, I have the giantest brain. All right, let's move this to a place where there is no desk bat. All right, that production value. All right. So if I press, it's a decent amount of flex. This is me pushing in the center, like right at the center of the plate. And if we look further left, we can see that there's a little bit of movement. But if I were to apply what I would consider a standard typing force, actually this is relatively hard of a typing force, it's not much compared to this. It's ever so slightly subtle. Mostly what you're seeing is my desk move. So kind of stiffer than you would, anticipate. Now, obviously, I'm just spoiled by comfortable gaskets and, new generation, big meme stuff, but still, it's something to keep in mind. Now, I've been beating around the bush like the entire time, but I typed on this for more than a month. Generally, for each of my YouTube videos, which is why you generally only get one YouTube video in terms of a keyboard review per month out of this channel, is because I take a solid 4 weeks to type on any board to get my ideas together. And when I say get my ideas together, I have lists of notes. And the notes generally exist for two purposes. Purpose number one is getting my thoughts down, and there are some nuances and little things that you're not going to pick up on until much later. You also want to get rid of the novelty effect, because the second you get anything new, you're going to overvalue it and think it's the greatest thing ever. But after spending 3-4 weeks with it, typing on it every day, the reality sets in and you understand more or less of what you actually have. The other reason I take so long is to actually make notes for the keyboard makers and designers and give them, like my specific thoughts on future improvements or current round improvements if possible. I typed on this for more than 4 weeks. I just kept typing on it, and I've really enjoyed it. It's loud. For example, compared to the RU65, which is what I'm typing on in the office currently, this is louder. You can hear this from across the office. And of course, this is a half plate. So typing on PCBs directly is going to sound a lot louder than going through a plate. I was using ABS keycaps, not PBT, which are going to sound a little bit louder as well. But I love the boominess. And again, a little bit of brass on the inside would have really been good. But this is one of those boards where I took more time to type on it out of pure enjoyment. As a matter of fact, it delayed my other reviews. Like, I typed on this a while back for like 5 or 6 weeks, and then I did a refresher, spent the week with this board again to just see if there's anything I missed. Now, this is one of those keyboards that just simply melts into your daily usage and you stop noticing it, which is a great thing. That is the best kind of keyboard, where it's just perfect. You type on it and it's perfect. You don't think about it. It just ceases to exist. Where you start and the keyboard ends, nobody knows. And like, as a whole, considering the price point and for what you're getting in terms of just the material aspect, the finishing aspect, the design craziness, it's free. It's literally free. Traditionally, I put my disclosures at the beginning of a video, but I forgot to put in my disclosure. This is my unit. I paid money for this. I paid full price. I bought it just like everyone else at group buy. So that's my disclosure. You may not know this, but like, I don't take free review units. I have to send everything back or pay for it if I'm going to keep it. So to not give me any incentive to share any thoughts that are not purely my own, or, you know, have any sussy motivations. This board is amazing. I think it could be better, one with a full alu plate for me, but that's a preference thing, because I'm willing to trade off the teensy bit of flex that I got with the polycarbonate half plate for a more clean, homogeneous feel and sound of the alu plate, which I have tried and I know is good. And I will keep reaching out to Glare. I will keep reaching out to Gion to have the option for a brass mid piece. And if you're interested in a brass mid piece, even if it ends up being like $150 or $200, because it'll probably be a very small MOQ, you should actually consider it if you own a Glare or you intend to own a Glare in the future. Again, the confirmation that we all needed was the fact that the Glare 65 is now a brass mid piece. Yeah, because generally when you release a second product, you improve upon it. So they realized that a brass mid piece was the better play. So let's see if we can actually get one for our Glares, TKLs, that is. All right. So last bit is, of course, my build recommendations. Now, I built it with Gat X round 2, relatively low weight linears, lubed with very thin grade 00 lube. Is good. However, the pitch, a little bit on the high side, because half plate, because super thin lube, because ABS caps, because no brass mid piece. But this is one of those boards where the best experience you will have is going with your de facto switch first. So if you're used to MX blacks, like low weight lubed MX blacks, put those in there. If you're used to, you know, high weight tactiles, put those in there. If you're used to big clicky boys, honestly, I think this would be a great build for big clicky boys. But the idea is start with exactly what you're used to, so you can kind of gauge what the board is doing to the switch sound and to the switch feel. And then from there, go the direction you want. Lucky for me, I don't think I need to improve over the Gat X R2. But if I were, theoretically, maybe I'd go new generation Nixies. I tried those on the Calliope. They were pretty good. And the only reason why I would consider them over the Gat X round 2 is simply due to a small acoustic difference of having, you know, standard nylon bottom with, you know, milky top. So, yeah, I I probably forgot something. If I forgot stuff, please DM me on Discord and tell me, Simon, you're a big idiot. And if I didn't forget things, then please DM me on Discord and tell me I'm a big idiot. Anyway, we'll do a quick typing test of this, and then I'll give you my summary. All right, suckers. You're here for the summary, huh? Huh? Then I'm going to summarize it. Here's your summary. Here's your summary. All right. You know, we could do both. So, the Glare TKL. Absolutely killer of a deal. Absolute banger of a keyboard. Now, it's not for everybody, but I honestly think that this might become one of the most iconic keyboards of all time. And with the Glare 65 running so soon, I think that Gian and Glare have also figured this out and realized this is going to be big. This is a better board than the F1. This is a better board than the F2. This is probably the best work that's come out of Gian Works so far, in my opinion. Now, I have yet to spend quality time with the W1, and that might be just as good, just in a different way. But the Glare is very special, because what other keyboard allows you to get a workout while you're doing your summary? I'm not sure, but once you guys find it, let me know. So would I recommend the Glare? Absolutely. I think it's a 10 out of 10 board that everyone should own, as long as you understand that the sound and feel is how I explained it in this video, which I'm not going to give you in this recap, because you guys should watch the video to support your local Simon, and hop in the Discord and say hello and give a like to the video and subscribe. And also there's a Patreon, and oh my god, my arms hurt. Oh. So there's your Glare review. Have fun.